So here's MATLAB executed AppDesigner. And when you do that, this is what you see. And I've lied a little bit. When you first execute AppDesigner, it gives you a pointless screen that says, do you want to start with a blank project, or do you want to start with one of these pre-made projects? And never do a pre-made project, because it's not going to be what you want. Everything's going to be called weird stuff, and you're just better off. AppDesigner is so easy to use, it's better off just saying you want to start with a blank project. So here's your blank project, and this is what it looks like. There's two main views in the middle. This is your app. The main view in the middle will either be a view of what your app actually looks like, if you're in design view up here, or if you click code view, it will be the code that creates your app. You'll see there's already code in here. You'll also notice that it's gray. If I try to type over it, just trust me, I'm trying to type, I can't. Most of the code is pre-made for you. And the code that's pre-made for you depends upon what stuff over here on the left you drag over to your app. Just as a simple example, if you drag over a button, and then you drag over a label, that's your design view. If you go back into your code view, you'll already see that now there's more stuff that wasn't there before. Here's your button that got created, and here's your label that got created. Let's flip back into design view over here. And to actually run this thing, you have to save it up here. And then once you save it, you run it. And just that fast, you created your first GUI. There's obviously a lot more to it, so let me describe how to give it a little bit of functionality. Unlike this middle ground, which is either going to be your design view or your code view, the thing on the right only works in design view. You click it, and it gives you things you can change. It gives you things that you can change involving its appearance, and things that you can change involving its code. Let's do appearance first, because that's easy. Let's create a simple app that when you click the button, it gives you a random roll of the dice. The label might initially say, click me. So on the right, you see it has text. You can change that and type click to roll a die, 6-sided die. And you can change all sorts of things. You can change its font and its color and how it's oriented. Let's just keep it like. Already you can see that it's not centered nicely. So let's say we want to center it, and it's still not centered nicely. We're just going to move it around, and you'll see that it has these little dynamic snap points. And if you see a snap point that runs all the way through the app, it's centered with the app. Here's our button. I'm going to move this up a little bit and center that. And we don't need this massive size for an app. So I'm going to click this lower right-hand corner and make it smaller. And I lost my centering, so I'll recenter it. And our button, I'll click, and it has text on it. So I'll say that rolls the button. Okay, let's take a look at the code view and see what's changed. Already you see that stuff has been added here. Things about it being centered, things about where it is, what it's called, and none of this is editable because it's all created dynamically as you move this stuff around. And if we save it and run, we get this. It doesn't do anything, but it's nice and simple and looks pretty good for something that took all of 5 minutes to do. Oh, by the way, at some point, you're going to forget to press save, and you're going to press run directly. And sometimes it will save for you. Sometimes it won't, and sometimes it'll just screw everything up. If you start to get really weird stuff that you can see you're making changes and it's not saving and it's not working, just close down AppDesigner and restart it up again. Let's modify this to give it a callback. So we want to create a callback with roll so it does something. And in particular, rolls the die and it updates this text. The name of this text, you can see up here in our component browser. I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger so you can see everything. We have our app called app1. It's composed of a single figure. You could have multiple figures in an app. And here's our label. And right now it's got this pretty awkward name of the label. I'm going to change it. To change the name of the label, I'm double clicking it, and I'm going to call it I was brought up in the day that all user interface elements begin with UI, just so you know what it is. I'm going to call it UI label. I'm going to change this to UI button. If I had a bunch of buttons, I'd be more specific about what kind of button. When you take a look in the code view, you can now see that it's called UI button over here and UI label. Still can't do anything with it. It's still grayed out. I can't type over it. Now I'm going to add the callback. There's a bunch of ways you can add a callback. The one way is you can see over here, there's a button side and there's a callback side. Or right on the device itself, you can right click it and one of the choices is callback. So either way works. Let's add a callback, add button pushed function callback. Some of these things can have multiple different types of callbacks depending upon how you interact with it. All right. Finally, when you've done that, there's one section in the code view that is not grayed out that will let you type. And in it, this gets executed whenever the button is pushed. And in it, don't worry about what event is. I've never ever used it, but you will use app. App is a variable that gets passed that has knowledge of every part of your entire application. It knows, for instance, that this label is called app.ui label. It knows that this button is called app.ui button. It has access to all these subparts if you want to change fonts or texts or any fonts or what the text says to any of these things. So I'm going to go back into my code view, and I'm going to say that whenever the button is pushed, we want to roll a dice. We want to create a random number between 1 and 6. So to do that, I'll start off with a random number, and I'll multiply it by 6. And then I'll take the ceiling of that random number, and I'm going to call that my die roll right there. And now I want to display it, and I want to display it on my label. And let's go back to the design view. You'll remember that I called this label app up here, app.ui label. And I changed its name just by double clicking on that and renaming it. So it's called app.ui label. So when I'm in my code, I can say app.ui, and here's all the things that I can use. I can use my up and down arrows to choose the different ones. I'm going to choose UI label. And now this UI label is this entire thing. Now it's more than just the text. It has text, but it also has horizontal alignment, vertical alignment, word wrap, font name, font size, and so on and so on. I cannot change. It would be illegal for me to say, make that equal to my die roll. That will give me that should give me an error. It'll definitely give me an error when I try to run it, because firstly, this is a number and this is a user interface element. So I only want to change the text portion of it. So I type dot, and there's a bunch of different things I can change. And one of the most common things to change is text. And if I wasn't sure if that's what it was called, I could go back into my design view, click it, and I'd see that it's called text right here. So it has to be called text. The things on the right are the things that it's called with the dot nomenclature. All right, so that's almost right. So now this is a text value, but my die is a number value. So I'm going to have to say num to string, and now it's a string value. And now I can, I should have pressed save first, and I did not, but luckily it did the right thing. And now every time I type roll, it'll give me a new die roll. So that's it. That's my whirlwind introduction to how to use the AppDesigner.